Hello, my name is Christopher Bolduc, and today I'll be talking about the Detaché bow stroke. The Detaché bow stroke is a technique on violin and other string instruments that calls for a broad but separate bow stroke. Detaché is a stroke that is somewhere between legato and staccato. Detaché is the most fundamental right-hand motion. It is used to play separate notes of equal value with one stroke per note. Detaché requires one to employ a constant bow speed and amount of bow pressure. The quote-unquote pressure is in relation to the bow on the string. Most of the time, it is performed in the upper half of the bow, slightly above the middle, but can be used anywhere in the bow or with the whole bow. The performer must maintain a straight bow, that of which is parallel in relation to the strings. Since there is no lift in bow pressure, we can hear a click on each bow change. The percussive nature of the click disappears in a large hall, and the result is a very clean articulation. The détaché stroke is a motion that employs use primarily in the larger right arm mechanisms, though freedom in the wrist and fingers are also necessary. To execute a proper détaché, one has to look a bit more in depth at the bow hold. The bow hold consists of the thumb being curved on the inner corner where the grip meets the frog, balancing between the skin and the nail. The thumb and middle finger are connected through the means of the stick of the bow. The ring finger is on the button of the frog, or on the middle of the frog if you don't have one. In the example that you'll see here, I do not have a button in the middle, but many bows do. The pinky goes on the inside corner of the bow, facing you, balancing on the groove where the skin meets the nail. And the first finger rests between the first and second joint of the finger. One should make sure that there is sufficient space between the index and middle fingers and the ring and pinky fingers. Be careful that the fingers do not creep up and localize weight into the index finger. And also be aware of overpronating or oversupinating, though most people overpronate the wrist and push the pressure into the finger. It may be helpful to think of the bow balanced between the thumb and middle finger most of the time. I'll now show an example of a sample bow hold. It is important to note that there are many different variations of a bow hold that depend on various factors. This is just one perspective. Using these methods based on average proportions of the human body, one can execute détaché quickly and in an efficient manner. Begin by holding the bow in your right hand to support the left. Make sure that the thumb and middle finger are connected over the stick and that the thumb goes on the inside crease where the grip and the stick meet. Place the ring finger on where the button would be on the frog, and be aware that the pinky goes on the inside corner of the bow, and that goes where the nail meets the skin. Make sure that the first finger rests between the first two joints on the stick. And there you have a sample bow hold. Be aware that everything should stay proportional and symmetrical when resting in the middle of the bow. Principles and methods of practice for détaché. First, memorize each of the levels of the right elbow to be parallel in relation to the string. There are 7 of them: the G string level, D string level, A string level, E string level, G and D string level, D and A string level, and A and E string level. Begin with the D string level. It's a good starting place. The elbow, wrist, and bow on the string must all be in one plane. You can imagine trying to rest a piece of paper between your upper arm and lower arm. The piece of paper should stay flat and not fall off. Begin practicing with small bows, starting in the middle of the bow, and use only 3 to 5 inches maximum. Stop before each down bow and up bow, and initiate the pull from the larger muscle structures. Do not press with the fingers, rather use the weight of your arm into the string. Open and close the elbow and keep the stroke parallel to the string. Be aware of any clenching with the neck, hands, or fingers. If this clenching occurs, try to figure out why it occurs and do what's necessary to relax those muscles. I'll now show an example of how one can practice Detaché in the abstract using these open string combinations. I will begin with 4 16th notes followed by 2 8th notes sounding like tucka tucka stop stop, and then proceed to play even 16th notes, trying to draw out the bright ringing resonance and overtones from the violin while also hearing the characteristic click found in the Detaché stroke. I'll now play a few short excerpts of Detaché in musical contexts. I encourage everyone to take a look at videos of these soloists playing. Their musicianship and technical demand is a masterclass on its own. The first is an excerpt from the first movement of Beethoven's Violin Concerto, with soloist David Oistrakh, conductor Kirill Kondashrin, and the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra. Note the transparent, silky, and earthy tone Mr. Oistrakh manages to produce. He employs Detaché primarily in the upper half, but can effortlessly do it in any part of the bow. The next example is with the soloist Christian Ferris and Zubin Mehta conducting the Orchestra Nationale de France, playing the Veloce passage in the first movement of the Sibelius Violin Concerto. Mr. Ferris is able to execute an intense, controlled, and passionate Detaché at a fast tempo in the lower half and in the middle of the bow. The final clip is of soloist Hilary Hahn and Esa-Pekka Salonen conducting the Philharmonia Orchestra, playing a passage before a climactic moment in the first movement of the Brahms Violin Concerto. This excerpt is probably one of the most quote-unquote pure examples of Detaché, an American Detaché at that. One can clearly hear the click and brilliance in Miss Hahn's sound in this passage. These are 3 examples of the seemingly infinite amount of clips that showcase a unique and masterful approach to Detaché on the violin. I hope you all have found this video helpful in some small way, and that this inspires you to continue on your quest to mastering the discipline of playing the violin. Stay tuned for more videos on the art of violin playing in the future.